So there's a joke of a husband and wife, and he's, helping at home. And at some point she's like, please, if you really want to help, just take the kids and go, take them to the park. Just take the kids and go. So he says, fine, I'll do it. He takes the kids, he starts going out. After half an hour, he comes back. He's like, honey, how long do you want me to help? How long do you want me to help? Yeah, half an hour. I can't help anymore. So it's just a joke, but it's funny. That's what you say when it didn't work. So, but it's funny because it's
even more funny than before.
Well, it's a tough time, and it's there's a lot going on, and it's kind of strange, trying to explain it to an outsider. He's like, what are you doing? You bread? You're getting rid of it and you burn
trying to
it?
explain it to our special what do you call it, like housekeeper?
Even a housekeeper.
He doesn't understand what's up with us.
But it depends how religious they are. But it is a strange idea. Why would, if let's say I made up a religion, the last thing I'm going to convince you to do is follow my religion and spend 7 days where you completely disassociate yourself from what? From carbs. Actually, that's what we all do now. But it's not really carbs, because then you get matzah. So what's going on here? So you don't eat bread, but you eat still the same ingredients. But so what kind of diet is this? What are we doing? Why is it so stringent? It says that afilu be'elef lo batel is different than any other chametz, any other kosher ingredient, right? A pig. If a drop of pig falls in your chametz, in your cholent, right, it doesn't make the cholent not kosher, believe it or not. But if whilst you're having Passover, a bit of chametz falls in your cholent, the whole cholent is unkosher, right? With regular kosher rules, 1 in 60 is the number. So if you have 1/60th of non-kosher to a 6, then it's annulled. You can't do it purposely, but if by mistake a bit of milk falls into a part of meat, it's still kosher. But with Passover, it's not like that. Afilu be'elef lo batel, even in 1,000, it's just a big number. It doesn't annul. No matter how much. That's why we're so strict about it. We kosher our kitchens, because in the kitchen that we have right now, there's a taste of chametz. It's stuck into the... Why are we so strict? It's like stricter than the laws of kosher. What's going on here? We have to get rid of it. We can't see it. We can't find it. There's no other food that you can't see. You're allowed to own pork. It's not suggested, because you might be like, oh, I'd love that, I'd eat it. I mean, I wouldn't, but someone else might say, I want it. You're allowed to own non-kosher food. You're not allowed to own chametz. By the way, you're allowed to see it if it belongs to a non-Jew. So if it doesn't belong to you, you're allowed to walk in the store and see in Ralph's chametz. You're allowed to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But you're not allowed to. Lo yireh lecha, it says you shouldn't be seen to you, meaning of yours. If it's of yours, you're not allowed to see it or find it. You're not even allowed to have it in your home, even if it's not yours, but it's in your home. So why is it so stringent? That's the big question about chametz. What does it represent, and what is it? So let's just think about it a second. You've probably heard this already, but let's get a bit deeper into the idea. So the idea is really, we're going back to the way we lived. We're not just remembering Egypt, we have to relive Egypt. A person needs to see himself as if he went out of Egypt. How do you do that? You relive it. It's not good enough to say, I remember or never forget. You got to relive the story to really say, okay, I was once a slave. I once went through this. This was part of me. And part of doing that is eating a food which reminds me of that lifestyle. What's that lifestyle? When I was a slave, I used to have cheap bread called Matzah. What does Matzah represent? Why do I need to relive my story? And the truth is because it gives me humility. And this is the idea of what we should be thinking of, is chametz represents pride, gava, and Matzah represents humility. That's why Chametz is the same ingredients as matzah. It's also flour and water. But because you leave it with time, you let it rise after 18 minutes, so it makes itself much bigger than what it is. Really, flour and water, the ingredients, should just take as much space as it does. But bread is mostly air. It's mostly nothingness. It's a bit like this world. You look at a table. It's mostly nothing, right? Matter is made of mostly nothing. It's only a small amount of it is actually the ingredient. That's how bread is. Right? Bread represents something which is not true. It's not real. Alma de Shikra. This world is compared to a world which isn't true. That's what bread represents. You might ask, so why do we eat it all year round? It's only bread. But there's a message here. We're trying to relive the past for a while, go back to the beginning. That's what we want to do. We want to go back to where we once were. And that's when we were slaves. Why do we need to relive the slavery? Right? So we all know, because if I am able to relive the slavery, then I'll have compassion for others. Then I can accept Judaism. The Jewish people became the Jewish people and were able to accept the Torah and the mitzvot only because they were once slaves. If I was from a wealthiest country, thinking I'm the chosen one, because every country thinks that. Don't worry, we think we're chosen too. But not chosen because we're better than anybody else. Chosen to have a mission. No. Right? Chosen to give a light to the nations, not to think that we're better, smarter. In fact, we know that it's going to be challenging with our mission. Okay, so going back to the point of Chametz, what does it represent? It represents going back to that beginning. What's the beginning? The breakdown of who we really were, what we really are. That's humility. Going back to the beginning where we were like as if flat bread, just what you see. No fake, no fluff, no wow, this beautiful home that I have, or this, just nothing. I was a slave for hundreds of years. Going back to that allows us to have humility, which then allows us to go into a connection with God. Does this all make sense to you? Okay, so I just want to make sure that I'm recording this. So here's what I want to get to, because this is the discussion here: pride versus humility, and that's the biggest battle of our lives. Okay, this is the Yetzer Hara versus the Yetzer Tov, is pride versus humility. So this is the letter that the Nachmanides wrote to his son before he passed away. There's a Igeret HaRamban. Have you heard of it before? There's a letter that Nachmanides wrote to his son. It's good to read it at least once a week. A really powerful letter that if you read it every single week, it can really inspire you. It's not that long. I once gave a class on the Igeret HaRamban, the letter of Nachmanides that he wrote to his son before he passed away. It's worth reading it. It's amazing stuff. So he says, at the beginning, he talks about being calm and never getting angry. He gives you a tip to not get angry, which is staying calm, which is always speaking in a low tone. One of the ways to avoid anger is to speak in a lower tone. Even if you feel it, lower your tone, and that would help you overcome your anger. So he also says that when someone overcomes his anger, I'll read you the language. You will have humility, which is one of the best, which is the best. Midah is the best personality to have of all the personalities. Why? Because Solomon says that because of humility you have the fear of God. And through humility you have the fear of Hashem, and you will always be aware where you come from. I'm not a big shot, I'm not better than anyone. Where did I come from? Nothing. Right? A little drip. That's where I came from. Where am I going? To the ground. What are we already in our life? Even in your death, what are we? How long are we in this world for? So when someone has humility, they start realizing that they have to have awe of Hashem, and all we have really is our connection to God. So how in the world to come you're going to be accountable for all your actions. This is all the language. Yeah. Right? This is the language. When somebody has
Anava, humility, he recognizes that, wait, what am I already? Why do I think I'm better than anyone else? So this is what Ramban says. What's pride, on the other hand? Ochot Tzadikim says that pride is right at the beginning. His first Ochot Tzadikim is the path of the righteous. It's a book that was written many, many years ago, 800 years ago. And we actually don't know exactly who the author is. But this book is tremendous. He goes through all the different personalities that a person needs to work on. And his first one that he says you need to work on is pride. What does he say? He says pride is the most important thing to work on, because it's the opening of all other works that we need to work on in terms of personality. I'm translating it, so the English might sound off. That's my excuse. But this is the duty of every single person, to force himself to get rid of pride. Why? Because that's the opening of all problems. And we've not seen this as bad in any other personality. Anger, anything else doesn't get as bad as pride. And that's why a person needs to be wise and to outsmart himself, constantly work and accustom himself to push himself into a place which he's not accustomed to push himself out of his comfort zone, to not be in a place of pride. He says, pride is like a coin that God signed himself on it and said, he warns himself, he says, be very careful with this. What did he say? Listen, this is the language of Egypt. Be very careful. Why? Because you're going to forget Hashem with pride, who took you out of Egypt. That's the problem. When you forget Egypt, what do you think of? Oh, look how special we got the Torah. We went to Israel. Look at our land. Look how much land we have. The exact opposite of Egypt. And God says, wait a second, always go back to the beginning. Relive the beginning, because you need that. Naturally, you're going to have that pride in you. There is a sense of good pride too, right? Where you're not overridden and you feel valued. The son of Hashem, you're a king or a daughter of Hashem, right? You feel royal. Right? Modesty, by the way, is a concept of royalty. It's not a concept of, I don't want people to look at me in a certain way. It's self-royalty. And the daughter, the honor of a king, of the daughter of a king, is internally. That's the way. It's not. I see these these posts that people are sharing, and I've heard this so many times whilst I was on campus. Men should be able to. Men should control. You don't need to tell me how men should think about me, right? This is something on those lines. You know what I'm talking about? You don't need to tell me. Men need to control themselves. It's not that was never the discussion about modesty. It's a mistake. Yeah, it's true. I need to control myself. That's 100% true. Men do need to control themselves. But that's not the discussion of modesty. Modesty is a sense of royalty. I'm the daughter of a king. How does the daughter of a queen hold themselves? The same with a man. Men need to be modest too. Right? I'm the son of a king. I have a certain value to myself. I hold myself to it. Does this make sense? It's not that I'm demanding of other people. I'm doing it because of other people. I'm doing it because of me. So, this is the language, right? He says that the proud person forgets his creator. That's what it says. You suddenly have gold and silver, and then you get high. This is the language of the Torah. Constantly. You get high, haughty, and then you forget Hashem, and then you say, what? This is, by the way, one of the reasons why we always mention Egypt everywhere. The mezuzah on the door, Egypt. It's a constant reminder of humility. That's probably a squirrel or something worse. But it's a constant reminder of humility. That's also humility. But this is what it is. Look, he says, you might say that I am the one that did this. I am the one that created this. And he says, no, you've got to remember that Hashem is your God. He is the one that gave you strength. And even by a king, it says, even by a king, he needs to constantly have a Torah with him so that he doesn't get haughty and think that he's better than everyone else. If the Torah warns a king, all the more so we have to warn ourselves. And that's why he says, he brings it right at the beginning, because pride is the worst. It's the opening of all the other problems. Marriage problems, pride. That's what it is. No, it's not. It's because of her. It's because of him. There's a pride issue. If you want marriage to work, there's obviously certain situations where divorce is necessary for sure. It's a mitzvah. It is a mitzvah. So there's times where it's necessary. But at the end of the day, if I want to know what's the ingredient to make a marriage work, it's humility. What's the ingredient to be a spiritual person? Humility. What's the ingredient to make my connection with my parents work? Humility. Take every single mitzvah. It's all humility. You got a guy who says, "No, I'll never do it. I'm not going to do it." Why? I'm not lighting candles. People used to tell me. Oh, Shira, she said, "Okay, we're going to light candles now." No, I'm not lighting candles. There's a certain element of pride versus humility. Humility is the beginning. That's where we're meant to get to. It's like, right. So I'm going to talk about some of pride and some of this is some Kabbalah. This book is called Kav HaYashar, written by Rav Moshe Koindenova. This is written, it's Ashkenazic sofer, writer, but it's completely Kabbalistic, filled with words of the Zohar and everything else. It's beautiful, really, an amazing, amazing sefer. One of the most powerful Hasidic teachings, really amazing. So he says like this. In his 7th chapter in this book, he talks about pride and he says some really interesting stuff, gets a bit more Kabbalistic, so let's read it. It says in Echa, Netanani shomema kol hayom dava. God says, I am desolate. All day I'm in anguish, because Echa is when the destruction of the temple, meaning he wants to be with us, but he's alone. Oi. Right, so our rabbis teach us that this is talking about the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is, what is the Shekhinah? It's God, right? But it's Him wanting to give to us. It's His presence in this world wanting to give. You know, God is everywhere, right? Hashem is here, Hashem is there, right? God's everywhere. But there's certain areas where there's more of an energy, of spiritual energy. For instance, if you go to the Kotel, that's going to be much more spiritual energy than if you are on the beach in LA, right? It's just different energies. So there's different energies everywhere in the world where, what is it? It's the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is that God's able to bring His fullest presence to you in this place, right? Because people are living in that way, in that space. We create the space, and then we're now the vessels to receive the good. Always wants to come in, but you just have to be the right vessel to receive the good. So our rabbis say that this is talking about the Shekhinah. It's upset about pride. This is why the Shekhinah is upset. Right? Destruction of a temple is upset about pride. Because pride is what holds back, puts the Shekhinah, the energy of Hashem that wants to give to you, it puts it in exile. And this is what it says, V'hodi nehefach alai lemashchit. My glory, my Shekhinah is not able, it's destroyed, it's being destroyed, meaning it's not that God is destroyed, but the ability for Him to give us good is, we are holding it back. We're not the vessels. He says like this, a person needs to think how bad pride can get. And therefore, a person needs to always put in his heart that it's not for no reason that our rabbis say that anyone who gets proud is as if he serves idol worship. Because through somebody who works on himself and his soul, he is, right, if somebody gives himself over to his pride, he says, he's now given unto other gods. Other energies are taking over him. It's not him anymore. That's what he said. Pride is masur tachat Elohim acharim. You're now with the pride. When you're in a place of pride, you're not you. You're now captivated by other gods. It's an interesting language. So a person needs to be wise and always put into his mind and be aware how terrible pride is. If a person's proud of his wealth, who has wealth? Who's your money? Who does your money belong to? It says, Liya kesef v'liya zahav. God says, money, silver and gold is mine. It's not yours. All that we have is not. Where did it come from? The ground? Who created? You didn't create gold and silver. Right? Cash today comes from gold. Or maybe Bitcoin, you might argue. But even Bitcoin, right? The whole value of money comes from, not from us. It's not ours. It's all God's. So it's not yours. Hashem could take it in one moment, like we've seen with many wealthy people. Whilst they were wealthy, so they had all the money and they thought, oh, no one could take my money away. They had banks all over the place. Money everywhere, in every country. If one country falls, the other one rises. They never lost money. Yeah, but Hashem took them away from their money. All of a sudden, some kind of orev, some kind of danger happened to them, and that's it. They got hit and they died, and they had very difficult challenges until they left this world, whether it's physical or spiritual. And sometimes they didn't even have a burial with their wealth. With all the wealth, they didn't have a proper burial. This is terrible, because we've seen how many people went in this way of thinking that they have everything, and then before all that they had got taken away. What did they have left? It was a false life that they were living. It was a false narrative. They were going in one path, and then suddenly it all got taken away. What was the point? It's ve'en satan velum shu pega ra magia alehem. Nothing. Nothing can take their wealth. They thought their wealth was never going to go away, and it all got taken away. He continues. It's really interesting. So why would a person put into his heart? Look how many people in this world work and work and work. They never sleep properly, day and night, running, early morning to late at night, working. In the day they work in the heat, and then freezing at night, right? Example. And they go in dark, they go in the snow, they go in the rain, in those days for sure. But even today, the hours that people work is crazy. Until they have a certain amount, hundreds or 200 or 100,000. They have a certain amount of money. And this is the point where they should be happy with what they have. And all of a sudden, they leave this world. And they have to leave it because that's what God chose for them. They have to leave this world, they go to the next. What do? They leave their wealth to everyone else. Shavik la'acharim, all that he worked for, all the work and hours of toiling, his whole life, all that money goes to someone else. And all this money he was gathering, working bit by bit until he got all this, and then all of a sudden it's left for someone else to benefit from. So what was the point of it all? He gives many other examples. It's mind-blowing. He says like this: sometimes a person's wife takes all his money after he leaves the world. And after he dies, right? That's nothing wrong, right? If your wife takes. But after he passes away, she goes and marries someone else. And then she is connected with the new husband. All the money goes to him and their relationship, and his own children that he had previously are left without any money at all. They don't have clothes. They have torn clothes. His children don't even have benefit from the money of their own father. And they see that his wife is now sitting with someone else, using all that money and enjoying it through themselves. And these orphans are left alone from their original husband, without their father. And they can watch. This is the language. They see as they drink wine, meat. This is all examples, right? But it means that they are enjoying this world. And what's the other side? All this money was given to someone else. It wasn't even given to you. Thought, I'm going to collect all my money, make a lot of money so I can give it to my children. It didn't even go to your children. It went to someone else. If a person remembers this, how I've seen in my own eyes, how many children grew up with so much pleasures, and all of a sudden all this pleasure turns the other way around, whether it's because someone passed away and they didn't even get the inheritance, or because there's a divorce or something happened because of the comfort of their money, and it's all because of their pride. So he says, This is the challenge of pride. What's the point? If someone's able to ground himself, he can have the right way of thinking. You see, it continues. What happens if he's wise? Somebody thinks, look how much wisdom I have. Look how much I've invented. Look how much I've come up with. V'im chachamhu shemitgaeh b'chokhmato. Someone who's wise, who's proud of his wisdom, should think in his heart, look how many people that were wise were trapped in their own wisdom. Why? Because through saying something wrong, they were wise. So they were advisors to many people. And today especially, one word was caught wrong. Whoop, they put it on a headline, it goes on Twitter. That's it, the guy's done. So you see that through one word, a person can fall in the worst traps. He can't get out of it. Like it's happened to many people who try to outsmart themselves, and then all of a sudden some king or some leader comes and they've trapped. A political advisor comes. They're trapped in their language. Can't get out of it. Until there's no way out of their problem, they've defamed or their name has been ruined in public, and that's it. There's no hope for them. Sometimes the people that just say, I don't know, are always better off because they don't get into a place where there's trouble. Just to say, I don't know. Sometimes having wisdom isn't the answer. You think you're so smart, and that causes you so many more problems. You shouldn't have said anything. If a person is proud of his Torah study spiritually, because he knows how to read, he knows so much depth, he doesn't realize that there's many other people like you. You think you're the only one? There's many people that sit. There's many Jews around that study. You're not the only one. And if you think you're great, look at those that went before you. Look at the greats, Rabbi Akiva, and all the great people that came before you. And in their greatness, that's where they had humility, not that they were proud. This is the language that the rabbis use. Migodel alvat harishonim, he said, Bimkom gdulatam sham heya anvunutam. In the place of their greatness was their humility. The higher someone was, the more humble they were. That's where you see their greatness. It's a very famous statement in Chazal, or rabbis, all the time they use this. Bimkom gdulatam sham heya anvunutam. In the place of their greatness, that's where you found the humility. You want to know if someone's great? Look at his humility in his greatness. Whilst all his fluff is happening, look at how humble he is. That's a sign that this person really is great. So he goes from one thing to the next. I want to finish just a thing, and then you can ask a question. You can talk about other stuff. But he brings a story. There was once a chassid, a pious person. Just 1 second. There's once a pious person who was traveling, and it happened to be that Eliyahu Hanavi was walking with him. This is brought down in Givat HaMoreh. It's a Kabbalistic story. They bumped into a dead corpse of an animal that was left out in the street for many days. It smelled terrible. And it had a terrible stench. They couldn't handle it. Until a point where the pious person had to cover his nose from the bad smell. So Eliyahu Hanavi, who's a malach, right, was going closer and closer to this corpse. And he wasn't showing any remorse by the smell. He's walking closer and closer. Until they actually got so close that, it was crazy. Like, why are you getting so close? All of a sudden, as they were getting right up to the corpse, and Eliyahu Hanavi was not showing it, there was another person walking towards them who was walking with great pride. An officer walking with, thinking of himself as something beyond. Making himself much greater than what he is, like the bread. And from a distance, Eliyahu Hanavi sees him and immediately he covers his nose. So the chassid, the pious person that's walking with Eliyahu Hanavi, says to him, Master, why were you not putting your hand on your nose when we were by the corpse? And only now, when you see this person far away, are you covering your nose? He's alive. He says to him, Eliyahu Navi says to him, that smells much worse than this dead corpse. Because a nevela, a dead corpse, kivan sha'adam nogeba hu tameh ad arev. If a person touches it, according to Jewish law, he's tameh, he's impure until the evening. But a person who touches a person like that can get many, many impurities from him. And we're not talking about physical impurity. Influence, a damage, a negative influence from that environment. So he says that pride is the worst midah. It causes so many arguments, fights, lashon hara, gossip, anger, lies, mockery. If you think about it, every sin in the Torah is part and connected to pride, because the damage of pride is so great. Oy loy v'oy nafshoy mishu ragil le'achezba. Woe is to that soul of a person that always holds on to his pride. And praiseworthy, happy is a person who sticks himself to the world of humility. This world is so much more pleasant, so much more praised, and that's what's going to take you to the world to come. This is the difference between a pious person and a non-pious. The pride versus humility. This is going to save you michibut hakeva, from the challenges of after a person dies. Kabbalistically, there's a period where it's called chibut hakeva, where in the actual burial, there's a part of your body that feels the process of decomposing. So you're saved from the decomposing, meaning you won't feel the pain of it. There's nothing more pure than humility. Because humility is what is it doing? It's transforming the physical into something that's spiritual. You're transforming your body, which is a physical being. It has a soul in it, but the physical part of you is transformed to something spiritual. Even the body comes connected to the spiritual through the humility. And therefore you give a light even after a person passes away, and you get many powers in understanding the Torah and many other things. So that's the leaf, that moment when the leaf just like lands on your window or something. So he says that throughout history, the greatest of the greats were able to create great miracles. And Elijah the prophet would come to them, and they'd have tremendous Ruach HaKodesh, understanding, divine understanding about people and things, all because of humility. Because a humble person is able to stand for the truth, take rebuke, and speak pleasantly. He's loved in the worlds above, and he's also pleasant in the worlds below. Everyone likes him or her, right? And therefore a person needs to pray to be humble, because it's not something that you'll just have automatically. And then he goes on, he says, from there it leads to many other things. From there it leads that you will have arguments. You always want to be the winner of every argument. And a person is bad in court, changes the look. Everything just goes bad. All starts with humility and pride. So if somebody comes to me and says, what are we trying to do? There's much more to it, but I'm not going to bore you reading Hebrew forever. But there's much more to it. But what's the message here? What's the message here? We're trying to relive Egypt. What's the reliving? Not that we want to be slaves. We've moved on. Right? Jews are about moving on. We rushed out of there. We didn't stay there. It's true. We remember the Holocaust. We remember our past. We remember our pains. But we were also able to move on. Look how the Jews have flourished after the Holocaust. Right? We had all the reasons to sit down and just stay victims. But we didn't do that. We stood up and boom. Wherever we went, Israel, America, all the countries that we went to, we flourished. Obviously through God's blessings, but also because that's the way we are. We move on. But we also stick to the past somewhat. What do we stick to? The humility that it's given us. There's a reason why we went through that past. Now, I can't tell you and explain to you all the suffering, why they happened, but one thing we could understand is that the past has given us a sense of humility. And that's where our greatness is. And that's why on Passover, when I eat that matzah, I need to relive as if I am leaving Egypt. relive it so that I feel like, crunch that matzah, you feel that matzah? Right, that's in a way, it's the freedom because we ran out quickly with it. But in a way, it's humility. This is what you see is what you get. That's what I want in me. And for 7 days, I want to try and plug into that energy of renewal, of what I was originally. Because in order to be the people that got the Torah, we had to go through that stage of humility so that we would be willing to accept it. To all the mitzvot, right? Which kind of people are willing to accept themselves the commandments of Pesach? It's an amazing thing, right? To be able to really say, okay, I'm going to do this because this makes sense, like it's an important message, and I'm going to actually get rid of Chametz from my house and relive Passover. It's an amazing thing. So that's what we need to do, is relive the past by eating that matzah and getting to a point of what we call humility, where what I am is what I really am, not more and not less. This is my ingredients, right? I'm a soul, but my body, what is it already? Everything I have is only temporary. So why would I be proud of what I have? Why would I think I'm better with what I have? This is what we're fighting for. We're fighting to say, look, we got to wherever we are, but look, we were once slaves. We went through that pain. That's the pride that we went through. We got to destroy it. We've got to destroy the pride that we have now and plug into that humility. So that's the reason of Chametz and Matzah. That's exactly why we have Chametz and Matzah, and that's why it's so stringent. Don't even have it in your house. Don't even see it. For 7 days, go through that moment where you were like a slave. You don't even see it. When you were in Egypt, you didn't see bread. That's all you saw. You couldn't see anything else. You go through that stage where you literally relive the story so you can actually instill within yourself a sense of humility. Because we know pride is the source of all the bad midot that we have. So that's my message. Is there any questions or thoughts that you want to ask about just Pesach in general? Or?